Hello and welcome to another Our Tots Tribe Academy Key Stage 1 video. Today's lesson is all about fractions, what they are and how we write them. Hello everyone and welcome to another Key Stage 1 video. Today I'm going to be teaching you all about fractions, what they are and how we write them. You do not need anything for this video. However, if you would like to have a go at writing the fractions when we move on to that part of the video, you could use a whiteboard or a pen and paper if you would like. Remember, if you find anything tricky or you need more time, you can pause the video at any moment. Okay, so what do we mean when we are speaking about fractions? Well, fractions are an equal part of a whole object, or shape, or number. Anything that can be shared equally into parts. By the end of this video, you should be able to understand what we mean when we say halves, thirds, quarters, fifths, and even sixths. So firstly, I'm going to show you what we mean by sharing equally, and I'm going to teach you some of the key vocabulary that you will use when we're talking about fractions. For that, I'm going to need to hop over into the kitchen. When you share into halves, the whole is shared equally into two pieces. Each piece of the strawberry is 1/2. When we share into thirds, the whole is shared equally into 3 pieces. So each piece of the banana is worth 1/3. When we share into quarters, the whole is shared equally into 4 pieces. Each piece of the hot cross bun is 1/4. When we share into fifths, our whole is shared equally into 5 pieces. Each piece of the bread is 1/5. When we share into sixths, the whole is shared equally into 6 pieces. Each piece of the cucumber is worth 1/6. Fabulous! Now that you know what fractions are, let's take a look at how we write them. Firstly, let's look at how we write 1/2 in numbers. Remember, when we're looking at halves, we have shared the whole into 2 parts, as you can see with this circle. Now, one of these parts has been shaded green, so we can say that 1/2 has been shaded. But how do we write that? Firstly, we need to count how many parts of the whole have been shaded. So in this case, 1 part has been shaded. So we can write the number 1. We call this number the numerator and it sits at the top of our fraction. Next, we think about how many parts there are in the whole, or how many it is out of. To show out of, we can use a dividing line underneath our numerator. So we can put a little line underneath. This is going to show us it's 1 part out of however many parts to make the whole. So we can now look finally at how many parts make the whole. Now we've looked at halves for this one, so there are 2 parts that make the whole. So underneath my dividing line, I'm going to write the number 2. And we call this number at the bottom the denominator. So this is how our finished fraction looks. It looks like 1 out of 2 because we have 1 part shaded out of the 2 parts that make the whole. Let's take a look at what half looks like on some other shapes. So here we have half of a square, so we have 1/2 of the square is shaded. We have 1/2 of a triangle shaded. We can see 1/2 of a pentagon shaded, and finally we also have 1/2 of a rectangle that has been shaded. Here we have another shape that has been shared into equal parts. Can you count how many parts this rectangle has been shared into? Did you say 3? Fantastic. Yes, this rectangle has been shared into 1, 2, 3 equal parts. So we call those thirds. Now, as you can see, one of those parts has now been shaded. So we could say that 1/3 of the rectangle has been shaded. But how do we write that? Now it's very similar to how we wrote 1/2, because we can firstly look at how many parts have been shaded. Well, just one part has been shaded. So then we can think out of how many. So when we do out of, remember that we write our dividing line underneath the numerator. So there is one part out of 1, 2, 3 parts that has been shaded. So that is the end of our fraction. We wrote 1 out of 3, 1/3. Great. So should we see what that looks like on another shape? Here we have 1/3 of a circle. As you can see, there are still 1, 2, 3 parts, so we're looking at thirds, and only one of those parts has been shaded in. So 1 out of 3 has been shaded, or 1/3. But what happens if more than one part has been shaded? Let's take a look. This shape is exactly the same rectangle as before. It has still been shared into 1, 2, 3 equal parts. When we're writing this, we follow the exact same rules. So firstly, I need to look at how many parts of the whole have been shaded. So I have 1, 2 parts that have been shaded. So my numerator is definitely this time the number 2. And again, there are still 3 parts in the rectangle. So I know that 2 out of, remember to write your dividing line, 1, 2, 3 to make the whole, 2 out of 3 parts have been shaded. So our finished fraction for 2/3 looks like this. It doesn't have to be rectangles. We can also see this in other shapes. So again, I have a circle to show you what 2/3 looks like. So again, we have the circle, the whole that has been shared into 1, 2, 3 separate parts. And from these parts, we have 2 shaded. So we can still see that there are 2/3, or 2 out of 3. This time our shape has changed. This time we are going to be looking at our whole as the shape of a circle. Now, this circle has been shared into quarters. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters that make the whole. But are all of those shaded in? No, only 1 has been shaded in. So we can see that 1/4 has been shaded in our circle. But let's look at how we write that. And we follow exactly the same rules. Once again, only one part has been shaded in. So we know that our numerator for 1/4 is the number 1. And then we look at how many parts it is out of to make the whole. Now, as we can see, we have counted 1, 2, 3, 4. So it must be 1 out of 4 quarters. So we have 1/4. Now, it's very, very tricky to remember to say quarters, as lots of us sometimes say 1/4. Now, this is not how we say quarter. This fraction, when we see 1 over 4, means 1 quarter. So this time our number of shaded parts has changed in our circle. I wonder if you can pause the video here to see if you can have a go at writing this fraction by yourself. Good luck! Fabulous, well done for having a go. We're going to look at this now together. So hopefully when you had a go at that, you could see that we are still looking at quarters because the circle has been shared into 1, 2, 3, 4 equal parts. So there are 4 parts in our circle. But how many of those parts have been shaded? Well, we can see that 3 have been shaded. So we would say that 3 quarters of our shape has been shaded. How do we write that? Well, remember, the first thing we do is write the numerator, and that is how many parts of the shape. So 3 parts have been shaded. 1, 2, 3. 3 parts have been shaded, so that becomes our numerator. Next, we need to look at how many parts it is out of to make the whole. So remember, we must write our dividing line underneath that number, not next to it on either side. We must write it underneath. So it's 3 out of, and this time we need to write the total number of parts. Now, there's 1 that's been left unshaded. So is that 3 out of 1? No, it's not, is it? It's 3 out of 4 whole parts. So we can see that 3 quarters is exactly the same with the number 4. We write 3 out of 4 parts. On your screen now you can see a variety of shapes that have been shared into equal parts. In a moment, pause the video and have a go at writing these fractions all by yourself. The first one has been done for you. Remember, count the number of shaded parts and you can write that as your numerator or the number on top. After that, count the number of parts in total that there are in the shape. This will become your denominator or the number on the bottom. Good luck, and we will go through the answers when you unpause the video. Fabulous. So I'm going to start by going through the answers of how we write the fraction for the very first shape. Okay, so this was a circle that had been shared into 1, 2, 3 equal parts. So I know that I'm looking at thirds. Now, only 1 part has been shaded. So I should have written my fraction as 1 out of 3 parts have been shaded, or 1/3. Fabulous, so we're going to look at the next shape. Now this rectangle has been shared into 8 equal parts, so this time I'm looking at eighths. But remember, for my numerator, the first thing I need to write is how many parts have been shaded. So I can see that 5 of my parts have been shaded orange, so I could write my numerator as 5. After that, I need to see how many parts there are altogether. Now there are 8 parts altogether. So for this shape, I can write the fraction 5 out of 8, or 5/8 have been shaded. Moving on to the next one, we can see that this shape has been shared into 6 equal parts. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. But not all of those have been shaded. 5 of those have been shaded. Again, we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts of this hexagon have been shaded. So I know that 5 out of 6, or 5/6, has been shaded in this hexagon. Looking now at our triangle, we can see the triangle has been shared into 1, 2, 3 equal parts. So again, we're looking at thirds. Of those thirds, 1, 2 has been shaded, so our numerator will be the number 2, and it is out of 3 parts. So 2 out of 3, or 2 thirds. Moving over to the last shape, we can see again it has been shared into 3 equal parts, and of those parts, 2 have been shaded. So we should have got the answer 2 out of 3, or 2 thirds, have been shaded. Well done if you got all of those answers correct. The final part of our video would like you to see if you can spot the mistake that I have made when I've written my fraction for this shape. If you can't spot it straight away, that's not a problem. You can pause the video and look at it for a little bit longer to see if you can work it out. Fabulous. Hopefully now you can see where the mistake is. I've written that this shape is showing me 2 quarters. That's not right, is it? I've said that there are 2 out of 4 parts shaded. What did I do wrong? Because I can see that I have got 2 parts shaded, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4 that are left. So 2 out of 4. No. Of course. I forgot to count the total number of parts. To write my fraction correctly, I needed to count how many were shaded, which was 2, so I did get my first part, my numerator, correct, but it's not out of 4 parts, is it? This shape has been shared equally into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parts. Can you see that? Fabulous. So it's not 2 quarters. It should have been written 2 sixths. I got my denominator wrong. Hopefully you managed to spot that for me, but don't worry if you didn't. You can get some more practice on how to write fractions if you follow the links in the comments to this video. Thank you so much for watching, and we can't wait to see you again. Goodbye!